Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon, one of the Career Readiness Consultants with the Kent Intermediate School District, and I am so delighted to have David Crawford with us today. He's a mobile app developer. Welcome, David.
Hi.
I'm so glad to have you here today. Let me put you on my right view here. As we get started this half hour, we're going to have a great conversation about your journey, your career path. Tell us what you were thinking back in high school. Did you think you'd grow up to be a mobile app developer?
So I would say not at first. What definitely really helped me was going to a trade school, and actually a junior, senior, I went to KCTC, and I went through their graphic design and their IT program because I was kind of in that place where I was like, I'm not really sure. Like, yeah, I like technology, graphic design, working with technology too, but in their IT program, I do want to make a distinction that they focused primarily on IT and not necessarily software development. So you're typically working more with hardware and networking and like building computers or troubleshooting them. And as I was going through that field, in that trade school, it was very great. Like, they offered a lot of different certifications if you really wanted to put the work into it. And I really was thinking, man, IT, it's really great. And I think I'm going to probably go to college for this. But it was definitely a really good opportunity to make the distinction. No, I don't want to do IT. I want to do software development, because they did actually offer, they had part like 25% of the coursework was software development. And so that really perked my interest, because I think for me, I lean more towards the creative side. And so I really like making things. And I also really like video games. And I knew that there were video games that you could code your own stuff into and kind of play around with it and make things your own and be creative with that. And that was definitely perking my interest more than IT. And IT is still a really important skill to me. I think it definitely really developed my troubleshooting abilities. And around when I made that distinction, I started thinking about, all right, like going into college, typically if you're going into the IT field, you may or may not need a degree. It's more certification based, whereas software development isn't really certification based. It's degree based. And so I had to make that decision kind of right there, like here we go. And so after that, I think making that decision early on, so I absolutely had a plan for college, that helped a lot. And during college, I was actually able to use my IT skills. I went to Grand Valley and worked in their IT department throughout all of college. So I was able to keep using those skills, even though I was studying for software development strictly. They overlap a little bit in the field. They're still really important, but there is a big distinction, I think.
And I'm fascinated that you're helping differentiate these, because when I think of IT, I guess I wouldn't have known there was a separation from software development. So I would love for you to really break that down. What is the differences, so young people can get a sense that they are two different roads?
Right. So IT, information technology, you will be working with hardware typically, or you'll be working with networking. And by networking, I don't mean with people, I mean with the computers. And like, how do wireless networks work, or how does the internet even work? And the Ethernet cables that you plug into your computer, how are they made? And you can learn how to make those yourself and how to troubleshoot. Like, I want to know what each of the little copper wires do individually in an Ethernet cable or on a computer. I want to know what all the different parts do on a computer. I want to be able to troubleshoot computers. Like, I want to maybe do that for a living. And so I'll work for a company that has an IT department that they need people to troubleshoot problems or set up new machines or set up new infrastructure for a company. And another area of IT, like if you're not big on working with like building computers, but you still like the hardware or you like networking, is security, like IT security, and dealing with making sure that your network is secure, making sure that everyone who's working for a particular company is safe while they're doing their work with their computers, and being administrators of that. If you've ever been on a school computer and you tried to install something, it's like, hey, you need administrator support. Well, there is an administrator. The IT department is handling a lot of that work. So if you want to be the person who is in charge of those kinds of things, that's really what IT is going to be doing. It's far more physical. It's far more based on the machines themselves, or it's based on the network of machines in an organization. Software development is creating applications, or you will be writing programming code that runs on the computers that are handled by IT. And so there's a big difference there, where software development is typically more creative, where you are making new things, or you're working with things that people have made in the software world. And then IT is dealing typically with the computer itself, the security of the computer, and the network the computer's on.
I really, really appreciate that explanation, David, because again, I want to be able to educate young people accurately. So this is really, really helpful. So you knew that you had this creative side. Fortunately, you were exposed to what, 25%, like you said, of the program at the Kent Career Technical Center in software. So you made a decision when you went to college to focus in on the software. How did you even know then what kind of degree you needed? Had you done any job shadows? Had you talked to any adults? Like, how did you start to navigate what the next step was for that education?
So I would say Kent Career Technical Center's teachers they were very good at knowing the field and knowing what was necessary. I think that in software, there's definitely a huge push for computer science degree. And off the bat, someone could say, yeah, I just need computer science and then I'm good to go. I actually didn't get a computer science degree. When I went to Grand Valley, I got a degree in information systems. And I think that it's really knowing, like, what are your strengths and what do you really want to learn, and what can you market with that degree. So information systems is going to be half software development, half business. And I knew for myself, I wanted to work with businesses in software development. And I believe like part of my future career is definitely more towards leadership. But right now it's still in that software development world. I would like to be more in leadership in a few years in software. But in order to understand how businesses work, I definitely needed that business side of the degree. Whereas with software development, because I do a lot of development on my own, especially even in high school and college, I knew college work for software is not enough. It's not going to get you a job. And you need to be really proactive about working on your own things and being creative in that field on your own. And so trying to keep my train of thought.
That's okay.
Yeah, I guess like being creative in that field, doing your own work. I knew that the computer science degree is going to be really big on software development and math and science. And knowing that, I knew, all right, like I'm able to supplement a lot of those skills, a lot of the software skills on my own. My weakness is business. And so I knew I needed to focus on that. Whereas with computer science, it depends on like, what do you really want to do within software? Like, do you want to be someone who's doing really complicated algorithm type work, or machine learning, or something that's very mathematically focused? Computer science is going to be big on helping you learn that. But you're not typically going to get any coursework in the actual business, like accounting and financing and project management. And so it's really like, what do you think you want to do beyond software? Do you want to be more involved with the business in the future? But you still need that software background, that information systems and computer science both supply.
I think I really appreciate you breaking that down. And I wanted to dig into something that you had said when you're getting the information systems degree. Again, you have to be proactive and do some things on your own. You're not going to get everything you need out of that degree to get to where you want to go. So give us some examples of what you mean by that. What were some things that you were doing to start to build your skill set, your expertise, in addition to your degree?
Right. So that's a good question. I think a lot of people ask that, like, oh, the solution is just to make stuff on your own. And then the big question is always, well, what do I even make on my own? And the thing about software development is, like, the innate creativity that's required in it means that when you look at things throughout your life, or you look at things you're doing in your day to day, you're going to notice patterns and things like, this could be better. That's really the mindset. Like, there's a better way to do this using technology somehow. And even if it seems silly, like, oh man, I wish there was a better way I could have I could have a to-do list. I wish there was a better way I could do that. And then you start getting into what software language should I learn to make a better to-do list just for myself? Like, you don't have to look at personal projects as a business plan every time. Like, if I made $1 million for every personal project, man, like it would be insanely rich. But, the bottom line is I don't make any money off of personal projects. It's more for my own education and furthering myself in that field. So you don't have to worry about, like, oh man, like it's not marketable, or like no one's going to care. Like, if it matters to you, it's interesting. You're going to develop a skill, and you can tell a story about, like, I solved a problem that I saw using technology. And I would say, like, one example, and it might seem far-fetched, but working in the medical field that I've done in the past, I see a lot of problems with medical technology because they're typically very outdated. The software that people in the medical field have to work with is usually very old and cumbersome. And so there's a lot of problems that I see in that. And I'm like, man, if there was a way, like, I could automate this just a little more. And we get a lot of messages, like, and I'll put this in the chat. There's a lot of, like, message structure that looks like this, like, as a silly example. It's just gobbledygook. It really isn't anything. And we always have to look at that and then look at another sheet that defines what everything is and helps us figure it out. Well, what if I made a little software tool that just parses it out and makes it readable instantly? And then, like, bam, you just helped 3 people in your company, and it's just something really simple and small. And so if you want to start doing personal projects, just look at what you're doing in your day-to-day, and you really need to start getting that mindset of, there's something that I can do better, and I can make something to make it better. How do I make that? When you start asking that question, then bam, you've got a personal project you can work on.
I'll share my personal project. I have no IT or software experience, but when I go to stores and purchase something, they say, do you want a receipt? And they at Meijer specifically, they'll already be printing it, and they'll say, do you want it? I'm like, no. And then they toss it in the trash. And I'm like, why can't they have a button that like they can ask me, there's an option to not print it. And all the coupons, they spit out the coupons. How come they can't say,
oh yeah,
no coupons? All that paper gets wasted. It drives me crazy. So yeah, some software developer needs to just get a button on there or something that says, no coupons, no receipt. Anyway, I digress.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about software. If you're creating these, trying to solve these problems that you see in your daily life, did you get free software off the internet? Did you, was it something you were getting through your college education? How do kids start actually doing some of this? How do they learn some of this while they're in high school?
I would say that the vast swath of free information out there and free software, I probably haven't ever had to pay a dime for anything. And because most of the useful tools out there today, this has definitely changed in the last decade, but today, most of the best tools for software development are free. They're open source, and they are backed typically by a big company, but they do it open source just for the sake of helping the software community. As far as learning resources, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if you know that, like, oh, I want to solve the problem of not printing receipts, then you need to start looking at, all right, well, what is the machine? Like, what is that machine even? Then it's a point of sale machine. And so I know that, well, there's a community of people who develop point of sale applications on, in this developer community. And so it leads you down that good rabbit hole and rabbit trail. And so it definitely depends, but I would say my day to day about like figuring out how to do things is always just looking things up. Like it's impossible for me to have everything in my head, and being able to know how to search for things and find the free information out there is so huge for the job. And I would say like my number one go-to for any problem is Stack Overflow. That's a website. If anyone's ever heard of that, it's a website that's typically targeting software development, but they have other sections of the site dedicated to any conceivable topic you can imagine. But there's a lot of very good software developers on there where people ask questions and they give them answers and they help them out. So that's usually my go-to. When I search for things on the web, I will often find Stack Overflow answers. And so I know like, all right, that's probably going to be a good one. So it just depends really. And if you're working with something really specific, typically if the market's big enough for it, there's going to be a developer community somewhere. Like they may have a Discord server, they could have a Slack server, they could have, a Reddit page or something dedicated to that, where there's like really specific people who can help you. Yeah.
What I heard too, David, about you is that you're a resourceful guy. Like you're going to pursue the answer. You're going to get onto the internet and Google things and look and dig. And I guess I want young people who are watching this today to start to do some self-assessment on that. What are the qualities that you're hearing about David that, oh yeah, I'm like that too. That's how I roll. This is a good fit for me. Or man, I kind of like things more concrete, and that maybe there's an answer already out there. I don't want to be the one necessarily finding or developing the answer. So that's part of what these career chats are all about. What other traits have you noticed for people who are successful in your industry? What other qualities do you possess?
I would say a really big quality is sweating the details. There's a lot of just little minor things out there that really matter and make a big impact. I'm not talking just about like hiring, but also just the day-to-day. So part of my day-to-day is work is like reading over, reviewing tickets that are made by our project manager to basically assign out our work for our next couple weeks. And they'll assign work out, and we write these tickets. We write the description. Developers write the requirements. We write all of this stuff. And so if your ticket's full of like spelling errors, or it's full of like it has communication issues, it's very distracting. But when something's very concisely laid out, it's really well done, somebody sweat the details on it, it makes such a big impact, I would say. And especially in programming languages themselves, if you are writing code that is well thought out and you've sweat the details and you've made sure that, man, this is as good as I can make it possibly. Like I wasn't trying to be sloppy about it just to get it done. Like take your time to make sure it's done right the first time, because there's so many issues that can happen if you don't sweat the details. There's so many little minor problems that can come up later on that are really going to bite you. And that's a whole mentality, I think, that you can see immediately through a resume and a cover letter, how they communicate, how you send emails, how you write code, how you make proposals, and everything. If you have the mentality of sweating the details, all of those areas of your life will start to be a lot higher quality, and you're really going to start paying attention, making sure each and every little thing is just really well done and really represents yourself in a positive way.
That's some gold information from a career mentor, David. I really, really appreciate that. Students love to hear what your favorite part of your job is and what your least favorite is. But before we do that, or as you're doing it, can you give us a little more just concrete ways that what your day looks like as far as what your job really is as an app developer, maybe connected to the kind of work that you're doing at the company you're at?
Yep. So the company I work for, Bravo LT, it's a contracting software company. And so, or we do consultancy work for other companies. So I'm not making software for Bravo. I'm making software for a company that's contracted me in. And so I work right now, my current project at the moment is with Gordon Foods. And I'm working on their business to business app where like someone who is a manager at a cafeteria, or they're the manager of a Panera Bread, or any type of person who's dealing with inventory or deliveries for or related to food, will be using this app in order to get their food delivered and track their deliveries, make deliveries, and return goods that may have been expired or have problems with it, whatever. So that's what this app is. And my day-to-day working with that app, I work on a team with about 6 other people, and we have a project manager. And I would say a lot of my day-to-day isn't necessarily like just raw coding. A lot of it is the planning of work, discussing the progress of work, and then testing. And it really depends on what kind of company you work for. But Gordon Foods is very thoughtful about how much time they put into the planning and how much they put into the testing, which means work is probably going to take a little longer than usual to get finished. But when it's done very well. A lot of companies really stress like, oh man, we deploy something new to our customers every week. And on one hand, that comes off as, oh, it's very innovative. They're very fast. They love making new things. But on the other hand, a week to turn out something to a customer, like every week you're getting something new out, means that it's probably not well tested, and it probably wasn't researched very well with your customers. And so usually when you take things just a little bit slower and you put a lot more work into the planning and the researching, it's a much higher quality product. And the testing too. I do want to say in college, I wasn't really introduced to testing at all, which I think is a sad thing. And maybe it's dependent on the college, or maybe it's just the program, but I don't think that there's a big emphasis on testing. And what I mean by testing, there is a term in software development called unit testing, which means that you are taking like pieces of your code out and you are hitting it with all kinds of possible things to make sure that it is outputting precisely what you're expecting. And it reduces bugs and issues so much when you have properly unit tested code with every conceivable value to make sure that it is being as consistent as possible. It's not gonna break under the stupidest little mistakes. And a lot of companies don't focus a lot on that. And I do think that there is a huge difference between the quality of work that you're doing if your company is really focused on testing. So if you're ever interviewing for a company, that's always a great question to ask during the interviewing stages is, what do you do for unit testing? And if they kind of look to each other and they're like, well, we do a little bit. It's like, that means you don't do it. And like, there's going to be some really specific answers to that question if they're good at it and they really like it. I hope that answers some of that question. You're muted, sorry.
I love that you're giving that insight. This is what I love about career chats, David, is unit testing. And even as kids, young people are looking at the colleges, right, that they're going to be choosing a program to go into and pay thousands and thousands of dollars. That's a great question as you're picking your college to see what kind of curriculum they're doing as part of their training to teach young people about unit testing. But certainly as an interview question, I love that for sure. What are some of the things that you really don't like about your job? What are some insights on that?
I have to make sure someone from my job isn't on the call right now. No, no, it's fine. I think in a creative field, it can be a little frustrating when all right, so I'll set the stage here. On my team, I also have a UI UX person, which is user interface, user experience. And those are the people who design the visuals. They design what the software is going to look like and how the customer is going to interface, how the customer is going to use it. And they also do research with customers where they will interview customers and ask them, like, what do you like? What do you want to see? What don't you like? They get a lot of information so that they can design the whole software interface really well. And so I would say something that can definitely be frustrating is when like I'm very visual. I worked a lot in graphic design as well, like just on the side. Like that's a big part of like part of my hobbies, I would say. And so I'm very visual, and I love good user interfaces. And so if you have your UI UX person design something that you don't agree with, it definitely it can be tough. And the bottom line is really just having good communication. And if you really don't agree with it, you need to be informed. You need to inform in the best way. But if you just don't have a good reason for it, like, oh, I just don't like it, well, that's not really usable. You're a software developer, you're not a UI UX person, so your expertise isn't in that area. And if you really think there's a concern for it, there needs to be a good reason. And so I think that might be part of the downside, is when you go up against designs you don't agree with. But on the plus side, if you are really good at communicating, or your UI UX person is good at communicating too, usually people are always open to kind of feedback and just talking about it. Like, and I would say the biggest way to remove that problem of having issue like design conflicts is starting at the very beginning and having a good breadcrumbs towards the fact that you may have disagreed with it. Don't be quiet about all of these things and then 2 months later say, well, I don't really like it anyway. Like, just right at the beginning, just say, I kind of have a problem with this, and I'm not, like, maybe let's talk about it. And then a couple months down the line, it might be a little better. Like, it might be more towards what you were thinking. People are usually a lot more open to change than we might think. And sometimes we stay quiet when I think we should just say it. It's okay in a lot of ways.
That's what you mean by communication. It's not just being a good listener. It's being able to be honest about your thoughts. It's being respectful of somebody else's thoughts and opinions. Like, there's a lot to communication. And I think that's one of those soft skills that we hear employers are always looking for. And our schools are hoping to teach young people those, but young people hear that, work with your teachers. What does that communication mean when you're working on a team project at school? How are you dealing with your emotions when you're frustrated? I mean, it sounds like, David, that's what's all coming to play when you're in the work world, is you have to give and take and be upfront with your thoughts, but also be respectful of other people's thoughts. That's just really helpful to put some of that stuff to play. Our half hour is already up, David. Can you believe that?
Yeah, it goes quick.
I want you to think about a final word of wisdom as I go to a website just to help the young people find more resources that they can ask questions about what's a typical day like and what kind of wage is out there. Whoops. Let me.
Yeah, I would say, like, being interested in getting into development, and you're like, maybe I'm not sure where to start, or maybe you have started and you're not sure like how to take it to the next step, because you're in high school. You're not probably going to get a job in software development the way you might think until you've gotten into college and you have an internship or later. So in high school is a really great opportunity to try a lot of things. And the thing is, I think something that really helped me get into app development, even because I didn't always do app development. I only started doing it for a couple of years now. I got started into it by doing a hackathon, and a lot of those are free, or I would say knowing the companies around you. They may have events, they may have those kind of get-togethers where people can come in and they just work on something together. And I really think those can help a lot, and you get to know a lot of interesting people. I would say it's hard for I think a good starting resource, if you in this area, there's a company called Atomic Object, And they do the atomic games every year, where they have people come in and they do exactly that. It's kind of like a hackathon where they solve problems, and they have the employees there, like kind of mentoring each group and kind of helping them work through things. So there's a lot of that. And I would say try and find companies, or try and find organizations that are doing hackathons to meet other people that are in your same situation, just trying to learn. And you might make something really cool. And it's like you get into college, you get a job, or you're looking for jobs, and you're like, hey, yeah, I did this and I did this and I did this. Like if you're making a couple things a year, by the time you're done with college, you've got like 20 projects. So yeah, I think that's a huge one, is really building up your personal portfolio as soon as possible. And it doesn't have to be a complicated thing. It doesn't have to even be finished. I have a lot of unfinished projects, but the thing that they do is they teach me. Like I'm learning things when I work on personal projects. I may not finish them, I may not have time to finish them, but I've learned a lot about it along the way, and it helps me for the next one to get even further. So don't be afraid to stop working on something too. That might be the second piece of advice. You don't have to finish every personal project you make. Doesn't have to be a full-fledged business. As long as you learn something from it, that's all you need.
That's good stuff, Dave, for sure. I want to thank you for making time in your busy day. I will share a resource for anyone who wants to stay after this call, but you've been a wonderful role model. And I know that we'll do a final plug for KCTC, the Kent Career Technical Center. It's a great opportunity in high school, right? To get some skills. So we'll plug that one more time too. So thank you, David, for making time for us today and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me come on and talk for a long time.